Attention business leaders and retired athletes. You looking for a place to belong? You looking for a sense of community? Are you feeling like you're kind of stuck? This is the show for you. Welcome to Live in the Lab. Hi, I'm Keith Bellis, and this is Live in the Lab. All right. A little bit of weirdness in front of the camera there for anybody who's watching. So I'm like, hey, where's the button? Where's the button? I can't get it going. How did you go viral on TikTok? You were on America's Got Talent. How much did you get paid to be on AGT? Oh, you didn't get paid. Keith and Steve here in Live in the Lab.
You're a great interviewer. I love it.
48 miles, 48 hours. And not just once. You ain't seen nothing yet. I hit 50 last time, and I'm like, yeah, things are a little different than they were 10 years ago. So trust me, things are to keep. You have no time for the BS that much of society seems to put on the table. Why is that? Like, what you're talking about is real right now. There's just no bullshit here, but it's just real. We brought you in with some Marley. I said, Joseph, let's talk music for a second. You said, well, Keith, oldies, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've never talked to a sir before. Why are you a sir? In many ways, we're the same story. I came from nothing. You came from nothing. I think the old saying goes that if you want a trophy, you climb Everest. If you want respect, you climb K2. I've built an AI myself, and it's pretty fascinating when you can have a conversation with yourself with your own knowledge. Have you done that before? Why are we rushing to make these tools if all they're going to do is hurt humanity? Does the world need an Oppenheimer moment with AI?
What a fun show.
Hey, it's Keith here, Keith Bellis, and I'm live in the lab. I'm live in the Business Athlete Performance Lab. We got a cool expert today to talk about some cool topics. Talked to him a couple times. Feel like he's my friend. Makes it good for you. We're gonna have a good conversation. Just met the guy, Jason Mar-Tang, cybersecurity expert. He's that guy you don't want to talk to. If you're talking to him, you might be locked out somewhere. Jason's gonna join us. Anybody hear about that MGM hack recently? Or any of those cybersecurity jobs where they locked you out? Sit at your desk with a big message saying, "Ha, you're out. Give me some cash." Jay comes in and his team helps you get your files, get your business back in order. So Jay's gonna join us in a few minutes. As you know, over the last couple of weeks, we have been talking about the experience of a lifetime for 10 people. This transformation experience. I don't even know if Jay knows about this. Why don't we let's go to the solo May right there in the front. The transformation experience, 10 people lined up. We already got 3 in the books, and they're going to change our lives starting January 1st, 2024. Going to end December 31st, 2024. You're thinking, what? Yeah, the 365-day experience. We are going to help somebody with their fitness, with their nutrition, with their wellness, with their emotional health. And then along the way, we're going to meet in 4 places. 4 places, Keith? 4 countries around the world. We're going to start in Panama. We're going to climb Volcan Baru as a group. The only place in the world where you can see the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans at the same time. And then we're all going to go home and go back to work, go back to our lives and stay connected, training together, mentally training together, running our businesses together. And then we're going to regroup in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to climb Mount Pico together. We're going to sleep in the crater, climb to the top, 6 a.m. for a sunrise. Magical mountain coming out of the Atlantic. And we're not done yet. We're all then going to head home again. Continue on with our life halfway through the year. It's June at this point. We're going to make our way in September, as Pico was the warm-up for the big dog, the tallest freestanding mountain on earth, Kilimanjaro. 10 of us in the group, we're all going to climb Kilimanjaro. And we're all going to successfully summit as we go through our transformation journey in 2024. But we're not done just yet. We're going to wrap up the year in Kenya, the east coast of Kenya. We're going to do 2 safaris, some daytime safaris, some nighttime safaris, and then we're going to make our way to the beautiful Lamu Island and Shela Beach, a place so magical, it will strike you forever. So check out the site, DM me if you're curious. We'd love to have you aboard. It's going to be a tight group of people. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to network. And if you're a content creator, you are going to create content unlike anybody else on the planet. So I invite you, come join the experience. Come join myself, Roland, and the rest of us. Transform your life. Don't just do it over 30 days or 60 days. New Year's is coming up. Don't just write down a New Year's resolution for a month. Write down 365 days. So come join us on that adventure. And along the way, hopefully nobody gets hacked. Bring in my friend Jason Mar-Tang. Jay, what's going on, man?
Keith, what's up, man? And thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely. Yeah. So Jason, admittedly, you have an interesting job. You have an interesting title. Let's dig into it right away. What do you do for a living?
It's funny because cybersecurity is such a broad field, right? You think cybersecurity, you think the guys in the hoodies are hackers, people doing damage, which is absolutely true. But the business itself is loaded with a lot of professionals, and really they're just looking to help protect businesses, protect information, protect your information. When you put in you fill out a form, where's that form going? It's going to a back-end database somewhere. And your information is personal. It's private. It should be protected. Well, cybersecurity professionals are the ones who are protecting it from bad guys, right? That's or gals, whoever, right? That could be after it. So in my professional career, I spent a lot of time engineering solutions to protect information. And now within the last 2 years, I've been working for an organization called Pantera. We actually help organizations hack themselves so they understand where their security gaps are and where they should prioritize their efforts before real hackers get in and do damage.
So just so I'm clear, you'll work with an organization to teach them or ask them to try to break into their own business, hack themselves?
Yes. Yeah. So it's like, think about taking, you have all your infrastructure, IT, et cetera, and you now can take a piece of software. And this was all once done manually, right? You would hire someone from outside to come in with the hoodie, drink Mountain Dew, and load it up on sugar and caffeine and bang away at 8 hours for a keyboard, maybe for 2 weeks. And then they would go away and they would give you a report after 3 weeks. Okay, we do this once a year. The problem is that that's only once a year and your environment's changing all the time. You're loading applications, getting people inside the organization. Once a year isn't enough. So our organization, our founder, who spent time in the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, spent time on the red team actually running penetration tests and hacking the nation state of Israel themselves to find out where the gaps are. So that's what we do as a company. We come in with software and we allow companies to press a button, hack themselves, understand where their gaps are, and understand what's working well.
Jason, isn't one of the biggest challenges for organizations when it comes to hacking the social engineering aspect? It's actually not as complicated as perhaps the public or the world thinks when it comes to hacking. Is it not just simply getting a human being in a vulnerable state, asking them a series of questions, and next thing you're inside their organization or their bank account?
Yeah, it's funny because when you think of cybersecurity, you think of like, crown jewels, walls, protecting the walls and all that. But what people are the perimeter? Why? Because I can go on LinkedIn and discover in your organization who are the Windows administrators, the database administrators, who has privilege, who the CEO is. And guess what? Now I can specifically target those people in campaigns because of either the title, the position, or the privilege that they have. And that's how it always happens. There's so much public information out there. Reconnaissance is always the first stage of the attack. So as an organization, or just even as yourself, what's your digital footprint? What's your digital identity? It's tough in this day and age with social media and wanting to be exposed, but you have to find a fine balance because there's two sides to every coin, and attackers, bad people, anybody can find out a lot of information through open source intelligence.
And then essentially you're dressing up as, I guess in the analog world, somebody shows up at your door in their FedEx outfit and convinces you that they work for FedEx or the hydro company. You let them in your house, and there's that credibility aspect, right? So what you're saying is, in the digital world, I will spend time perhaps grooming you, reaching out to you, emailing you, knocking on your door, trying to build a relationship, grab some vulnerability, and then next thing I'm inside your system. Is that what you're saying? Or I guess even further than that, you're saying that I've done all my research on Jason to understand the questions I might want to ask him or the questions I want to probe him with. Yes, I see you nod there. That's what I want to do, right? Because then you're comfortable that you feel like I know you, right?
Something like that. But you could go on my Instagram. You'll understand that I'm into fitness and all that stuff. So guess what? Like, you're going to craft an email that maybe revolves around the gym or revolves around fitness. And when you do that, you're more likely to fall for the phishing attack, the social engineering attack. But it doesn't have to be phishing. I could be calling you up. I could be sending you a text message. It could be anything like that. All of these are forms of social engineering. Social engineering is when you're compromising. Again, you're pretending to be something or something false to compromise the user. And it really is as simple as that. I can call up your organization's help desk, pretend like I'm an admin, try and get my password reset. You give it to me or whichever. And guess what? Now I'm in.
Yeah. I got a call from my mom yesterday and she's like, can you check my email? I'm like, all right. So she sends me her email over and she says, yeah, I talked to the guy. I'm like, mom's 76. Like, Mom, you never call the guy from your email. Like, there's nobody you should, in my experience on this planet, there's rarely a time where you'll phone a stranger from your inbox. She's like, well, yeah, he was telling me that my family this, my family that. And I'm like, so what? So today's conversation was timely because I said, Mom, like, you taught me not to cross the road. You just don't phone people from your inbox.
Yeah. It's something I feel really strongly about because these hackers, scammers, whoever you want to call it, they prey on people who just don't know any better.
Yeah.
and that are just ignorant. Older folks fall victim to this quite a lot. But it could happen to anybody. I've been part of breaches where emails are crafted but look, you know what? Every organization has security awareness and they go through these trainings and don't click on the link. I don't think anybody has gone through an exercise where the simulation, the training, whatever worked 100%. Someone always clicks a link. Someone always falls victim. And what that's all you need is one person to fall victim. And now you have a beachhead, a foothold inside the environment. Once the hacker has a foothold inside the environment, what they're going to do is they're going to try and look around and see where they can get. They're going to look for identities. They're going to try and move laterally, and they're going to move laterally to another piece of infrastructure. And they're going to do the same thing. Maybe they put another backdoor, and they slowly spread. It's like they slowly spread until they can maintain persistence. And maintaining persistence is really damaging because, for example, when we talk about ransomware, if you're maintaining persistence, the general guidance around ransomware, and if we're not familiar with ransomware, right? Ransomware is a very specific attack. You probably have heard it in the headlines or everything that's happened. But hackers get in, they get access to information, and they encrypt information. And when you encrypt something, you have a key, a set of keys. And without that key, you're not decrypting anything. So what they do is they encrypt information. They go, if you want this key back, you got to pay me $10 million, $1 million, right? Or like $1 trillion or whatever in order to get the access to the information back. And if you don't, they take the key and they throw it away or they do something else. It's very damaging. And in the case of businesses or industries that rely on the availability of information, when you're locked out, wow, it's really damaging. Or even worse, if you're in the industry of healthcare and your information gets locked out, people's lives are at stake. So it's a very damaging, but yeah, it's a very big business.
It would seem that the internet is not a new thing. It seems bizarre to me that people still get tricked.
You think that until you see some of the campaigns that I've seen and the persistence that attackers use. It's more common than you think. And especially when, I've heard stories of you get an email, you go to a link, and instead of Facebook, you go to Facebook and there's 3 O's, right? Or something like that. And the page looks exactly like the real page does. So you put in information or whichever, and guess what? That information is going to attackers.
Yes.
So I would say it's easier than you think to get tricked and to get fooled, up until the point where some organizations, they don't even bother to run like phishing tests or phishing simulations because they know their users are going to fall for it. So instead what they do is they try and run risk profiles of if Keith gets compromised, what's going to happen? If Jay gets compromised, what's going to happen? So they can do blast radius analysis and damage control on the what if scenarios.
So they're already assuming that I'm going to be compromised.
Assuming breach. It's a very common term in the industry is assume breach. Just assume that the attackers are in. If the attackers are in, what are they going to do? If they're in this area, what can they get access to? If they're in that area, what can they get access to? And that takes a lot of manpower and a lot of time. So what we focus on, for example, is automation. Roll automation into it, and you can now double the manpower and the turnaround that your team that's already strapped and very busy and very tired, we can make them more efficient. And that's the whole goal of like automation and what we do.
I've never considered that. And I guess I understand your logic though, right? So if I'm the CEO of an organization, you're saying, okay, Keith, your profile is going to have access to this in the organization. And then from you, it just goes outward, doesn't it? Or different silos, right? So that my silos of information are this much, this finite. Would that be a fair assessment of mine?
Exactly, right? And that's only if you've done the proper, what we call least privilege. If you follow least privilege, that means, Keith, your job function says you do A, B, and C. Therefore, you should only be able to do A, B, and C. Me, on the other hand, I do D, E, and F, and I should only be able to do D and F. However, if I do D, E, and F for my job, but I have access to A, B, and C, I am overprivileged. And that is a very common challenge and problem. The reason why it's a challenge is because think about organizations that have thousands, tens of thousands of people. It's very easy to have privilege creep and just identities all over the place. And again, all you need is the right person, the right identity, and a large scale compromise can absolutely happen.
Privilege creep. I've never heard of that term before, but I like it and I understand it. I can only imagine, Jason, the amount of organizations that former employees still have access to, or existing employees that have access to parts that they don't even know or shouldn't have access to. And I've never really considered the simplicity of that. But as an entrepreneur setting up a company, you start up a company in 2000, I give Jason access to this, and then years go by, and still there 15 years later. And Maybe Jason has access to the whole business and he shouldn't, but he's one of the first guys. Like, I've never thought about that creep access, isn't it? That would be a massive challenge for organizations.
It's a challenge. And that's why there's a lot of technology. And what, to be fair, this is the role of the security organization.
Right.
You opened up and said, what do you guys do? It's this type of stuff that security professionals try to fix, right? Sometimes we're talking about an identity problem. Sometimes it's the identity team. Sometimes it's the security team working with the identity team. It all depends on the size of your business and organization.
Of course.
I mean, some people wear so many hats that they have to do everything. And that's definitely challenging. But resources are hard to come by and everything costs money, right?
Yes, of course. Without naming names, maybe the audience wants to hear a real crazy story that's come across your desk, either from a customer you have had or a customer that you have heard about. I know I would like to hear some interesting stories because this topic fascinates me, especially as we work into a world of AI and AI generated content and AI generated personas. That's a whole other conversation for a moment. Let's talk historically. What have you seen that would scare people that you're like, yeah, that's normal?
Yeah, I've acquired more interesting stories now in this current role because of my technology that I work with and the automation. And I'll preface some of these is that time and speed is everything. So we're looking to make sure we understand, can we leverage the speed of automation to understand what hackers can do? Because hackers are automating too, and they're working together and they're doing a great job of teaming up and all this crazy stuff. Like, so that's some stories, right? So I've gone in and we've run software where we found endpoint detection and response, EDR. So you think of AV is traditional, like, hey, antivirus, but EDR is endpoint detection and response. And it's next gen. It does more analysis. It's where everybody has moved to in the industry at this point. And it's basically a staple. Everybody has EDR at this point. And I've gone in and found situations where EDR wasn't rolled out for whatever reason. We found gaps in machines. We've launched attacks and been successful where clients have looked at me and said, Jay, what's going on? Why is this getting through? And I was like, I don't know, bring the team on. The team gets on. Oh, the EDR is in monitor only, not active block. And what's crazy about that is that you can have technology, but just because you have technology doesn't mean it's configured or working in the optimal manner. And that becomes not a technology problem. It becomes a process problem. But how do you, until you're actively testing and running continuous tests and testing, this is why hacking yourself is so important. So that's one little anecdote. I've seen organizations have, repeated or accounts that I've gone into organizations, turned on the software, and we've gotten domain admin within 10 minutes or within minutes. Now, let me explain what domain admin is. In the Windows world, right? We all know most of us are either Mac users or Windows users. Okay. In the Windows world, everything is interconnected in what's called the Windows domain. So you have a computer here, a computer here. Maybe you have 10 computers on the floor, and all these 10 computers end up talking to 5 servers or hundreds of servers. And all of these servers, they're all governed by what's called the domain. So for example, I was an old school Game of Thrones fan. My domain is called Westeros.com. And then I might have Winterfell.westeros.com as a server. Why I mention all this is because the access between these servers is governed by the privileges on the domain. So going back to what we were talking about social engineering, if I find a Windows admin in LinkedIn, I can specifically try and target that user to try and get them to click a link so I can maybe grab their credential and see if I can use their identity to log around and move laterally. But this Windows admin may only have access to a certain subset of machines, which would be a good practice. But if the attacker is able to escalate their privilege to a higher tier asset, what we call a domain controller, which is essentially the master of puppets. If an attacker can get access to a domain controller with the right privileges, they can then maintain persistence and obtain domain admin. And domain admin is keys to the kingdom. At that point, going back to what we were saying about ransomware, if I have domain admin access and I've maintained persistence, I can take my pieces of ransomware and I can spread it all over the environment. I can hit the button and now everything is encrypted. Done. Pay me $50 million, otherwise you're never getting your data back. And so to that point, we've gone in and gotten that relatively easily, and it's pretty impressive. And conversely, we've seen a lot of organizations that have great security. We try and go in and we find nothing. And instead, all of their endpoint detection response, they're lighting up like a Christmas tree. Their SIM, security information event management, that's collecting all the logs in the environment, is reporting and alerting the SOC, the Security Operations Center, and people are running around. And it's like, that's what we like to see. We like to see responses and people active and actually catching the activity, because that means when there's a real actor inside the environment, you're more than likely going to be able to identify them and catch them sooner rather than later.
Jason, I'm going to suspect that most people would think that cybersecurity is just all technology. And no, it's just a tech thing. When in reality, as I'm listening to you speak, it sounds like there's actually maybe closer to 3 levels, right? There's the technology, there's the process, and then there's the human level, the sociological level. Would I be correct when you assess risk to one?
You nailed it. So we always say in the industry, we like to say people, process, technology.
Right. Okay. Yes.
You nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it, right? The people actually, the flesh and blood people that are actually there and you're interacting.
Yes.
The people behind the keyboard who are working with the technologies that help the day-to-day functions and get things done. And then the process, though, the process is, what are you going to follow? What is the response going to be? For an example, right? Jimmy Bag of Donuts, Joe Schmo, whatever, joins the organization. We have a process to create his identity. If he quits or he leaves, we should have a process to remove his identity and his privilege. So your use case from earlier, before, when you're saying, oh, I set up someone when the organization came in and this user's been active for 15 years. That, in theory, shouldn't occur because we should have the right process to remove stale users and all identities. But let me tell you something. I go into environments and we have something here. I go into environments and we run what we call an Active Directory password assessment. We connect into the domain. We pull out all these identities and we run through a cracking exercise. So passwords are not stored in clear text. Passwords are stored in what's called hashes. Hashes is, you could think of it as, if my password is password, I run it through the hash algorithm and like gobbledygook gets spit out. So that's how passwords are stored. If I can get a bunch of gobbledygooks inside the environment, I can actually try and crack them and get clear text passwords. It's like jackpot for an attacker. We go in and we crack passwords all the time. And it's more common than you think. And again, it's nobody's fault. It's challenging, but this is where having an understanding of this in your own environment, you can be proactive and try and either change these passwords or create a new policy, right, to step that up.
Jason, will passkeys and the concept of passkeys change how people use passwords? And for those that don't understand what passkeys is, maybe Jason, you can explain that. But I know there's been a push from the big tech players about let's implement passkeys to help people stop thinking about passwords. Can you comment on that?
Passkeys, and I think we're also going to be moving to just password lists, right? We'll start, I mean, we already do it, right? Think about you open your phone or whatever, it's either fingerprint or it's face identification. I think we're going to be moving towards that, not in the immediate, but definitely as into the future. I think that will definitely become a thing. I think there is some risk. I mean, we already see attackers, what we call MFA, multi-factor authentication fatigue, meaning when you get the push to your phone and it says, hey, did you approve this? Right? Like if you do that 10 times to someone, they're going to be like, WTF, like, fine. And they're just going to hit it. Well, guess what? If they hit it and it's not legitimate, you've just given potential access to someone else. And you see how there's risk reward with convenience and security that is always going to be the case as we move forward with technology, with AI and all this other crazy stuff that's coming out. It's risk reward. It's always risk reward.
You got me on that one, Jason. I got to tell you, I never thought about so I obviously use 2-factor authentication as much as I can. And I've always...
Good. You should. Thank you. You should. Please do.
Yeah. And I've said to myself, yeah, this seems relatively easy to implement, but difficult to break into. However, to your point, I can see my mom or somebody getting that message showing up on their phone 8 or 9 times and finally just saying, man, and just letting somebody in. So I didn't even recognize that there's still a flaw in that process as well, isn't there?
If there's humans involved, there's a way to compromise. And unfortunately, humans are always somewhat involved. Even with automation and AI, humans are still involved. I mean, there are still people behind the keyboard in every single organization. And that is the challenge because the phrase is we're all human. It's true. We make mistakes. We get tired. We deal with personal issues. We're not thinking 100% clearly all the time. And it's in those times when compromise can happen. And that's where, as a security professional, you need to be diligent. And I hope that teams get the resources they need because security teams generally are very stressed and it's hard to get the resources they need to make sure they're protecting everything.
I bet. Jay, what's the motivation of a hacker? It's not always money, is it? It's power, isn't it? It's control, isn't it?
It's anything. That's why when we talk about attackers' mindset, yeah, there's money. Yeah, there's sometimes notoriety. Right? You hear about certain different, what we call APT groups. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threats. We're talking about groups that are nation state sponsored, whether they're coming from China or Russia or whatever nation state. They can be labeled APT 20 or Cozy Bear or Blue Bear or whatever. they want notoriety, or maybe maybe you're a political activist, or you're in politics, and maybe they don't agree with your message. So they want to take down your website, or they're trying to or tarnish your brand, right? I mean, we see so much with branding today and stances, right? Oh, I disagree with you, so I'm going to wreck your website, and I'm going to, just dork around there to make you look like a fool. Maybe they're sitting in their basement and they go, I just want to see if I can. They're just doing it for kicks. No, literally, I mean, this happens all the time. So it's a multitude of reasons and motivations that can just aggregate. So you have like individual actors all the way up to nation states. And we're talking nation versus nation, us versus them, stuff that you hear about in movies like Israel. Like, it's unknown to most people because it's happening. It's not seen, right? It's not like a hot war where we hear about what's going on in Ukraine or whatever, but this stuff happens all the time. It's been happening for years. So when we hear that, oh, Russia did this or whatever country did that, it's like, yeah, it's been going on. I challenge everybody to look up Stuxnet malware on Google. A very interesting story.
I'm familiar with Stuxnet. I'm really glad you brought that up, because yes, to our listeners on a podcast or watching and just listening to Keith and Jay, go and Google. That's a fascinating story. Israeli? Didn't it start in Israel?
Israeli Americans versus
Yes.
the Iranians.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. So, but Iran's nuclear program was set back by years. Right?
That's right. The drive they put into they infiltrated the drive into their program, and that little.
Right. Because these types of critical systems, electric systems, whatever they're supposed to be separate from the internet. They're not supposed to be on the internet. They're supposed to be isolated, what we call like air gapped.
Yes.
Meaning like they're not connected to the internet. Right. So in theory, you shouldn't be able to get hacked. But I tell you, if you can compromise someone, you can get someone to plug in a drive. And it's not as hard as you think. Someone recently brought up I love that. Yeah. Someone recently brought up to me a guy I really admire. I'll keep him anonymous, but super sharp guy, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And he was like, it's mice. I said, what? He goes, money. So you financially motivate someone. Ideology. So it's, I don't agree with what you're doing, therefore I'm going to turn against my own country or whatever because I don't agree with their ideology. Compromise, meaning blackmail, like you got to do this or I'm going to release all your naughty photos or kill you, threaten your family, or who knows, right? You're compromising someone. Or ego. Someone wants to be James Bond and they just want to do stuff. This is how you can compromise people in anywhere, right? And I'll be clear, it can happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere. It can happen even here, and we're broadcasting. Well, you're out of Canada. I'm out of the States. It's like it can happen anywhere because people are people.
Yes.
And that's why it all goes back to people. People are the perimeter. And once the human element is so critical when we think about cyber, because again, there is always somebody behind the keyboard or doing something.
I hate to go down here, but since you brought it up and used the term mice, it's almost as if you can have as much cybersecurity you want, but what you really ultimately might need, and I'll go here, is an exterminator, right? Because you need to eliminate the human element, right? So I know that sounds really extreme, but if somebody's compromised, well, you do like the movies, you get rid of the compromised human.
Yeah, but how do you, it's too late.
Fair, yeah, you're right. Yes.
If I'm going after critical infrastructure or whatever, I've compromised someone, all I literally need is someone to just plug in a USB stick or do something. And at that point, it could be game over. So it's challenging. You need to have physical security control is not often discussed. I mean, I work in the tech space where it's a lot of logical controls and software, but physical controls are just equally as important. You want one person in at a time. You want to make sure everyone is badged. And even that, right? Again, because if you're compromising someone who has the access, game over.
Jason, talk about air gap. It's a term that perhaps some people have heard in the movies or have seen it around, and you alluded to it a couple minutes ago. It would seem to me that many problems would be solved if we air gapped more computers or air gapped more systems. But is it because we're so reliant on networking and the internet that it is difficult to air gap something and still be productive?
Yeah, it's tough. You're exactly. It's productivity. It's simple productivity where when you think about so again, a security best practice is making sure systems are up to date and patched. How do you do that? You got to get them from somewhere. You got to pull it off the internet. Now, yeah, you can pull it off the internet and try. And again, you asked me to define air gap. They say that, or sneaker net is another term,
okay,
right? Because you have to put on sneakers and walk over. So you have your main network over here that's connected to the internet, and then you have your critical network that's over here, and it's in its own little box. And in this box, it's just maybe 100 machines. I don't know. I'm just Yeah, look at the hearts. It's just in this box and that's all it is. And it's air gapped, meaning there's no physical connection from one network to the other. That's what air gap means. Now, yeah, in theory, that would be great. But the problem with security is that it's always between security and convenience. Do we want to make things super hard to get our work done? You have to have a little bit of give and take and a little bit of leeway in order to make sure that whatever industry or business that you're in can continue to make money, get revenue, whatever business you're in, right? So while in theory it sounds nice, I just don't think it's practical.
And I would imagine for a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, the idea of having an air gap network and an internet connected system becomes complex for an SMB to probably.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And you need, but I'll tell you what, a lot of companies they're looking to, it's actually the opposite of air gap. But when you are leveraging cloud infrastructure, you can actually, there is a level of security that comes along with that. So for example, remember I talked about the Windows domain before and all these machines are connected under the Windows domain?
Yes.
Well, guess what? If you don't have a Windows domain, a lot of that compromise, if you have domain admin, what does it matter? You're not on a domain. So a lot of small organizations that are coming up, they'll just use the cloud. They'll use Gmail or Office 365 and all of the apps are software as a service apps, meaning you're not using applications that the business owns. Software as a service means you're connecting to an application online, like Gmail, Zoom, whatever. It's all software as a service. You're paying someone for the software. You don't own it. You're just using the application. And a lot of times what that does is that transfers the risk elsewhere. Now, is it foolproof? No, but it's another way of accomplishing that. So we see that a lot as well. And it's an organization, the problem is that organizations, when you start out, they're not security minded. So you can often find yourself at some point, you're big enough where it's like, okay, we just went through 3 rounds of funding. And it's like, did we even consider if we get hit with a ransomware attack, this funding may go bye-bye because we have to like pay a ransom to get our data back? That scares me to death. Like I know I have a bunch of buddies, they have businesses and I go, have you thought about this? Like you should think about it.
Yeah, no kidding. Because it would be an easily overlooked item on the budget because
the problem is what budget? Why? Because it's like security is not a revenue driving arm of a business. It's insurance. Hey, I need $1 million for my program. $1 million. $1 million for what? To protect ourselves from things that haven't happened yet.
Yeah, to protect your 10 million. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, but right. And there's ways of crafting. Again, it's not like return on investment. It's not like, oh, I put $1 million here, I'm going to get 10 million back. But if you think about it, I'm going to put $1 million here to protect ourselves from losing 5 million. Well, that's different, right? I mean, if you're a retailer and you're generating revenues from sales, how much money you're going to lose? Or maybe let's say you're a casino. How much money are you going to lose if your systems get locked up day by day? How often? Okay, let's just say it's 10 million. Okay, so it's 10 million for an event. You call that like, what is that? I believe in the theory, it's SLE, the single loss expectancy. Then you could say, how often does this happen? The annual rate of occurrence. Oh, it happens once every 5 years. And then you can calculate how much money how much will we potentially lose? And therefore say, oh, if we're going to lose this much, let's invest it into the security program. That's a great way of trying to justify, hey, we need this technology. We need to hire this headcount or whatever.
Of course. Before we dig into the business athlete lifestyle that I know you are a big part of.
Love it.
I want to dig into something you talked about a few moments ago, which is politics and cyber hacking. And we know there's a U.S. election around the corner here in, 14 months or so. As an American citizen, how do you feel about the upcoming election? Not from a political point of view, but from a disinformation. You're in the industry, AI generated content. I would really love to hear your point of view, your personal point of view, what the industry's talking about. What's going to happen over the next 15 months?
I think we're going to see a lot of it. And the reason I say a lot of disinformation, misinformation, all of that. Why? Because it's been happening for years. It's been happening for years. And I don't mean within the last 10 years. It's been happening in the last 100 years. Like propaganda effects have been happening. I mean, look at what happened during World War II from both sides, spreading propaganda. Propaganda is the way you influence an election. And you can do that. Traditionally, you do like with pamphlets and papers or whatever. But now everything's online. So if I can go on and I can create bots that are going to comment and say, it's this stuff on the left side and that stuff on the right side, you could try and influence things and influence people. And the double edge there as well is that if you say something is misinformation and it's not, and it's fact, or there's actual grounds in truth, you could potentially remove information. So it's a mess. I'm I'm trying to think of the term of how I feel about it. I would say I'm frustrated of where we are because the media, generally the mainstream media, is the one that controls, this is misinformation, this is not this is disinformation, blah, 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 blah. And it's very hard to distinguish what's fact and what's fiction, especially with AI and what's coming up. It's going to be extremely tough. And I think it's absolutely going to proliferate as AI becomes more and more prominent.
Do you think people are naive to the next 15 months? I've been banging the drum about the election just because I know what I know with AI and what I can build, what I've seen, my research, our conversations. I'm a nerd. I spend a lot of time in this. So I ask myself on a general basis, do people really, and you're right, it's been happening for 100 years, but the subtleties, and I would say to you that, I'm going to say to you that we live in a world now where 50% of people think the sky's blue and the other 50% think it's a shade of blue. Where I grew up, where we all agreed it was blue. But now there's the group of people where 50% have this inherent belief that it's not blue. It's actually shades of gray, shades of blue. It's not blue. And they believe in that. It makes me wonder if those seeds began 4-6 years ago on a more aggressive scale, where just kind of pumping the disinformation or alternative fact and what's true, what's not true. For the first time in my life, Jay, I grew up reading Western media, very much old school, watched my news at 6 o'clock, read the newspaper in the morning, trusted the broadcaster giving me the news. You know, Jay, for the first time in my life over the last few months, I have questioned it all because I can see it's a really uncomfortable feeling as a human being.
Yeah, it's challenging. And I absolutely think that it's happening and will continue to happen because guess what? We don't have to keep it to the United States, although we're talking about the United States election.
Globally,
any country, right? If you want to, you can either go to war with a country or you can try and sow discord within.
Yes.
And keep the people separated and not united. And that's what happens. And it just infuriates me because that type of, it works. Like it works. And if I'm a nation state trying to attack another nation, that's the type of stuff I'm going to do. If I want to avoid a hot war, I'm going to do that instead and try and just sow discourse. And the state of things, we don't have to be all down and some of that, but it's something I feel really strongly about because I see it all the time and it's a shame, right? People can't have a conversation anymore. They're like, no, I don't want to. And I'm like, man, just hear each other out. Like what happened?
You raise so thank you for going there because you're right. What happened? We all of a sudden have woken up where we can't have a discourse and have a debate and agree to disagree. It's either you need to drink my Kool-Aid and agree the sky's blue. If you don't agree it's blue, I don't want to talk to you. If you agree with me that it's gray, then we'll talk, but I can't have no conversation with you. And what really makes me concerned is the subtle ways that nation states or organizations will be able to subtly control a narrative over time and shift it.
Yep.
Right? Just a subtle shifting of narrative over time before they own a narrative. And I think that is going to be a big challenge as AI continues to proliferate all aspects of the workplace. Is this the changing and the controlling of a narrative, even just subtly, Jason?
It's AI, and I would say I strongly believe it's social media and the way we interact with where the AI is going to be present.
Yes.
And the problem is we get into echo chambers, and it takes a lot of self-actualization to be like, am I in an echo chamber? Right. And but the sky is gray. Everyone else thinks the sky is gray. Everyone's telling me the sky is gray. And if someone says the sky's blue, dude, I'm going to be like, why? Why is the sky blue? Sky's blue. You're passionate about it. Tell me why you think the sky's blue.
Yes.
Change my mind. Like that, I think is important. But somewhere along the way, I think as people, we're easy to anger. And I think people generally are very easy to get angry and that will fire people up. And they go down a path of that where they don't want to talk because it's not a matter of, oh, I don't know, whatever. It's, I dislike this person. I hate this person. I don't want to talk to this person. I have no reason. We don't see eye to eye. And my opinion is like, yeah, no, you don't see eye to eye. Maybe find out why. Find out why you don't see eye to eye. And you might learn something interesting.
Hallelujah. I've often, as I've aged through life, I've taken the approach of, if I don't agree with Jay and I don't like Jay, well, I'm going to work harder to try to understand and want to try to like Jay, or not like Jay, but at least get his point of view and try to get close to him as a human being, right? Because that enlightens me more as a human being. So I can turn my back and walk away and think I'm the greatest with ego, or I can engage with you and learn. And that to me is what seems to be lost in society. as of late.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So Jay, business athletes,
Yes.
when we reached out to you, I know you're a very active individual. As we work up the last quarter of our show today, I want to keep the theme around the idea of business and athletics and how being a business athlete makes you a better business person.
Yeah. I mean, to me, when you say this athlete, the first thing that comes into my mind is just discipline, because you need discipline for your business, no matter what your business is. And if you are trying to be athletic, you also need discipline. You need discipline with your physical training. You need discipline with your diet. And that's not easy. It's not easy to balance your work life, whatever you're dealing with on your personal life, and then also try and do the physical training you need. But but taking little steps to build that discipline over time gets you where you need to be. And that discipline ultimately will get you the results you're looking for, whether the results is, I want to lose a little bit of weight, I want to build some muscle, I'm experiencing pain in whatever joint, so I got to strengthen these muscles. Or you have a hobby, it's like, I'm trying to climb and I'm having trouble climbing. All right, maybe I got to work my back out a little more. Like, it just depends on what your individual goals are. But of course, we have responsibilities. So business athletes, it's the marriage of what I need to do on a day-to-day basis, what my mission is, depending on whether that's your own business or you're working for an organization, and a marriage of, hey, these are my physical fitness goals. And what do I need to do? And what can I do to make sure I'm meeting both of them?
Yet it seems to be so difficult for many, which has really been the impetus to start the Business Athlete podcast, the lab.
Yeah.
In my experience, difficult for people, Jason, to consistently do it daily. I know when we talked, you said, and I loved what you said to me. You said, hey, Keith, I got a pretty structured schedule. Let's find a spot on the calendar for the show. And I loved that, because when you said structured schedule, I knew right away that you come from a place of being a business athlete, because if you have no structured schedule, you have no success.
It's very hard. If you can't fall into a routine, it's not impossible, but you have an uphill battle. So for example, like, I know people in healthcare, right? People in healthcare will have a shifting schedule. That's tough. Not possible. It's tough. And it's going to require more discipline to get in when you can get in. If you're fortunate enough to have like a regular 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever, you can try and schedule things before, after, in the middle, depending on what you do. And if you work from home, sometimes that can be an advantage. But a lot of times what I find that people have trouble falling into the routine, building the habit. And you have to build the habit in order to build and ultimately reach the goals. So, but you don't want to boil the ocean. Start small.
Yes.
Right? Like, hey, all right. So I'm immediately like, this is just stuff that I would tell anybody. Hey, I'm trying to lose 10 pounds. Okay. You drink any soda or juice? Every day. Cut it. Water only from now on. See what happens. Right? Give it 2 weeks. Now you're used to only drinking water. Cool. Hey, are you active? No, I sit at a desk all day. All right. Why don't you get out and walk for 30 minutes 3 times a week? Cool. Build that habit. How's the walking going? Great. Up it to 4 or 5. Now this person's walking 5 days a week. They incorporate that into their lifestyle. It's like, how's it going? Great. Have you thought about strengthening your legs or strengthening your arms? Or do you have a gym membership? Do you have stuff at home? Yeah, I have a Planet Fitness, or I have this Crunch Fit, whatever fitness. Cool. Why don't you get in 3 days a week and this is where, if you're talking to me, I usually will start saying, hey, try a program or whatever. And then but notice it started just with, I'm cutting out soda, I'm only drinking water. It's little changes. You make little adjustments, little course corrections. Small course corrections over the course of time will ultimately change the course of your path and your trajectory. But you have to take the first step of that first course correction in the first place.
As you're saying that, I'm equating that back to business over the last few weeks as we've been rolling out the show. When I started, Jason, I wanted to be everywhere. We were doing all these things. And I woke up trying to build all these processes and trying to build all these routines, and I was failing. So I said to Roland, okay, we need to stop 98% of them. It was like a reminder moment, right? No, we just got to do one really well, and then we'll do 2, and then we'll do 3. And I know that. I know that as a human being, I didn't get to where I was because I haven't failed a number of times, but I had to have that awareness moment, that aha moment again, going, wow, we're not hitting 10 all the time. Right. Let's just do 1. Okay. Why? We got 1 going well. To your point, let's go for a walk. Okay. Next, number 2, let's remove the sugar. Number 3, because we were failing trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah. With many things, but definitely with fitness goals, you need to have a focus.
Yes.
Because if you try and do too much, you'll quickly get overwhelmed. And I think that's where a lot of people fail as well. Going back to what we were saying, I think that's why it's challenging for people, because they try and do everything without trying to set little milestones and hitting those little milestones. And that along the way, when you're hitting little milestones, can be very rewarding. And it's like, oh, and that'll motivate you to get to the next milestone, which will motivate you to get to the next milestone. And then all of a sudden you're collecting all these milestones and people are looking at you going, hey man, you lost 10 pounds. I did. And it's like, you ever have someone compliment you on either the weight you've lost or the way you look or whatever it is? Not saying you need to do that, but it's for other people. But man, it's motivating. It is motivating.
For sure it is. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
I had a guest on the show a couple weeks ago, Joel Yee, and I'll repeat what he said to me. He's like, I'm a little fellow from Malaysia and I went into the military and then I started bodybuilding. He used the word bodybuilding. I'm like, oh, I love that. It's such a 1980s word, right? Bodybuilding. I went to bodybuilding. He said I put on 25 pounds of muscle. But what he said next, Jay, just put a big smile on my face. He said, when I got up in the mornings and started walking into meetings, my shoulders felt bigger, my chest felt more confident. And he used the word, I felt confident more often because I just felt stronger. And I said, I have a better presence in the front of a room. And he goes, ultimately, being a business athlete to him made him feel just more confident.
I couldn't agree more, right? If you're squatting 225 or benching 225, you've put in the time under tension and you've put in the work. You will take that same discipline and apply it to your work life. And if that manifests in the form of confidence, which I completely agree it does, great. If it manifests in, I'm going to get this done because I got to grind this out. And I know, just like when you're in the gym, you need to do progressive overload in order to have muscle growth. Same thing with your mind. You need to have progressive overload. If you're not challenging, your mind's not going to grow either. And that can come in many forms. It could be talking to peers. It could be doing industry reading. It could be studying for certifications. It could be all of that. So that's saying, see how the mindset that is in the gym mirrors what you can do as a professional, which is why I love the marriage of the two, because one affects the other.
It really does. And anybody I have spoken to that mirrors the two of them, takes the principles of business or takes the principles of athletics and puts them in a blender together and lives the combined lifestyle is successful because they have the one common denominator, which you pulled out, which is discipline. Without discipline, you don't have success with either or. Now, what do you do to keep yourself athletic? What I've met guys on this show so far, fascinating to me because I'm thinking typically somebody's riding a bike or going for a run or running a marathon. Man, I've had guys who play baseball, who play soccer, just things that you don't normally think people are doing to keep themselves active. What do you do, Jay?
So the main goal that I love to do is just hit at the weight room, right? Yeah. Ideally, when I'm not traveling, 6 days a week, 1 day of rest. I also try and incorporate cardio. So recently, cardio is tough for everybody. Admit it. I don't really enjoy cardio. If I really want results, I'll get on the Stairmaster, but man, that is tough and it's boring. So recently what I did was I picked up like cycle class or spin class with the music. Very cool. Another nice way to stay active. I also pursue martial arts. I'm a very big fan of martial arts and Chinese Kung Fu. I'm a Wing Chun practitioner. So I'm always talking about analogies, fighting. Now I talk to my team all the time about, I throw in these Wing Chun terms, but to answer your question, it's a combination of weightlifting, cardio, and martial arts all together. And ideally, right, I can try and fit that in throughout the week. Don't be wrong, it's time consuming, but for your own mental health or for your own physical health, right? It's become a big part of my lifestyle.
I love the idea and the metaphor of a squat, Jay. You have 225 pounds on your shoulders. You go down into the squat and you have one of two options. You either bail or you can grind it out and you stand up. It's like life, isn't it? It's like in the morning, you're getting out of bed or you're rolling over and hitting the snooze button. So the squat to me is a wonderful metaphor because what I also love about the gym as well, Jason, is that it's the equalizer for everyone. 45 pounds is 45 pounds, regardless if you're a female or a male, whether you're white, black, Asian, gay, lesbian, straight, it's the same weight. And I love that because it equalizes everything. And that to me is the power of being in the gym from a strength perspective. Do you follow me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're here to work.
Yes.
And that's what matters is the effort you put in to get that work done. And when you work hard, you get results. And of course, it's a combination of that in your nutrition and eating. But again, it all goes back down to discipline. But I completely agree with what you're saying. Like everyone's on common ground. You're in the gym, everyone's the same.
And I always say, at least get there. So to your point earlier about taking the little steps, okay, so I don't like going to the gym. And it's funny, Jay, because to me, the gym is a metaphor for whether that's yoga class, whether that's going to do martial arts, whether that's going to a weightlifting gym, going to a spin class. It's just metaphor for taking care of yourself emotionally, mentally, going to a therapist, but it's just this idea of taking care of your human first. That to me is really what going to the gym is. And then starting that discipline of at least show up. Okay, so you showed up today, you didn't really do much work, but you showed up. Tomorrow, maybe you do a little bit more work. Just keep trying to show up, because that's the first step. Consistently showing up, isn't it? You said 6 days a week. So consistently show up. And then I'm hoping your 7th is day of recovery, because people don't talk about
It is. No, I take recovery very seriously.
Good.
So no, you got to rest. You definitely got to recover. So that's typically what I do. Now, if I'm thrown off, if I'm scheduling, if I want to plan 8 hours the day before, my schedule's off. So then it becomes to, like you said, just show up. And then it's just a matter of, all right, I'm going to get in, I'm going to show up until my routine falls back into place.
Yes.
But like coming up, I'm going to be spending a week in Chicago, and then I'm going to Israel. It's like, I'm going to just get in when I can get in. Show up. Just show up. It's a great term. Just show up. Just get there.
It's true. It's true. Jay, this has been a fantastic conversation. We talked cyber hacking, interesting topic to say the least. We talked AI. We talked social engineering, which I think a lot of people don't think about when they think of what you do for a living, when really it's just about looking in the mirror and tricking the human being. And we ended our conversation in the gym, talking business and athletics. As we wrap up, Jay, any final closing words from you? You want to plug your company? You want to plug anything from the business side of things? Would love to hear it. The platform is yours.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you've made it this far, hopefully this was informative to you. If you're interested in, again, it's Pentera.io. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Jason Mar-Tang. Love to chat about anything cyber related, or if you want to chat about physical fitness, I can talk for hours about that too. So please find me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect, and that's the best way to get at me. So Keith, thank you so much. For you and your listeners, this was a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Awesome. Stick around for a quick sec. I'm going to play us out with a little bit of DJ Dens, and we're going to leave the lab. Keith Bellis, along with Jason Mar-Tang, going to go wide shot here. Live in the lab. Live in the Business Athlete Performance Lab. You can catch us live Monday to Friday, noon Central Time. We stream on YouTube. So you'll find us live on YouTube Monday to Friday, noon Central Time. You'll find us on LinkedIn. You'll find us on X. Working on a little maybe nighttime show on X. Different audience, Jay. Different audience on X. So I'm working on a little show on X. Maybe dig into the news and see how that goes. Because we're all about building trust these days. I'm all about building trust. The goal is to get the audience to know over this guy over here so that we can do some work together. I'm live in the lab. I'm Keith Bellis, and I'll see you soon.